Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. AI companies and researchers talk incessantly about AI safety. These quotes like to conjure up thoughts of the Terminator or the Matrix. It's very convenient because it gives the AI folks an argument that cannot be falsified, that they can use to change the subject when anyone brings up anything they'd rather not talk about. And there are lots of things they don't want to talk about that in almost any other industry they would have to be answering for on a regular basis. Things like Microsoft's AI website, powered by OpenAI, being used to create hardcore, non-consensual deepfake porn of Taylor Swift that went viral on Twitter right before the 2024 Super Bowl. Things like the 736 crashes and 17 deaths involving Tesla's self-driving mode. Things like, and I'm quoting the New York Times directly here, Scarlett Johansson said no, but OpenAI's virtual assistant sounds just like her. No, the AI industry would much rather talk about things like, quote, between 37.8 and 51.4% of surveyed published AI researchers give at least a 10% chance to advanced AI leading to outcomes as bad as human extinction. Here's what I want to talk about. I'm 100% confident that 100% of those percentages were pulled out of somebody's ass. This is the Internet of Bugs. My name's Carl. I've been professionally diagnosing, fixing, and writing software for 35 years now. And today we're going to be talking about what AI companies talk about when they talk about AI safety and what they should be talking about instead. Now, first off, I have to admit, it is certainly possible, however unverifiable, that everyone who says that they're involved in AI safety is actually really working on protecting humanity. It's possible, however unverifiable it may be at the moment, that the AI safety research that those people are doing will turn out to be very valuable to humanity at some point in the future. I really doubt the AI safety work is going to turn out to be useful or effective for reasons I'll talk about later. But there is a chance, however small, that the normal rules don't apply in this case. And I'd say it's very likely there are at least some conscientious AI safety researchers who really believe in the risks and who are working really hard to try and mitigate them. But it's impossible to know how many of them are conscientious and how many aren't. What is crystal clear is that these supposedly existential AI safety issues are driving the conversation. And it's impossible to know which of those issues are being brought up in good faith and which are just being used as distractions. And that's good for the AI companies, but it's bad for most of the rest of us. As someone who's spent a lot of time in startups, I can tell you that the more money is involved, and the longer the timeline before anyone expects results, the more likely you are to get fraud, or if not fraud, the more likely you are to waste a ton of time and resources. And the incentives for AI safety are bad. It's basically the same incentives as FTX, but without the risk of a bank run. It's the same incentives as Theranos, but without the risk of people comparing the results they got from Theranos with blood tests they got from an established lab. It's the same incentives as exaggerating your tech product launch, but without the risk of some reporter finding the restaurant you supposedly called and verifying that you didn't actually call them like you said you did. Or the risk that some pretentious YouTuber is going to go frame by frame through your demo video and point out all the mistakes. There will be no way for anyone to know if the primary AI safety projects did a good job, or in fact did anything at all, unless and until superintelligent AIs actually come into existence. And by then, it will be too late. That may be many years from now. That may be many generations from now. But nevertheless, the important conversations, at least here in the US, are more about this moral hazard. Here is the current US government talking points about AI. They're talking about dual use models, which are basically a model that is good at like helping people try to cure cancer, but is also good at helping bad people figure out how to make a new bioweapon or something. They're talking about test beds for risks that AI might propose to, like taking down the power grid or wiping out the military. They're talking about protecting government software. And last and almost certainly least, a call to curb deepfake sexual images. You see anything in there about Tesla autopilot crashes? How about stealing someone's voice for your AI product after they told you no? after they told you no twice? How about ignoring your software engineers when they tell you your AI can be tricked into making deepfake porn, at least until Taylor Swift gets victimized by it and it goes viral? Did you see anything about training your AI on copyrighted data without compensating the copyright holders? How about even bothering to keep track of what material was used to train your models? How about people getting sent to jail because of bad facial recognition AI? How about AI resume screening bots discriminating against people with uncommon or ethnic names? How about AI resume spamming bots that charge job seekers to insert made-up crap in their resumes and cover letters, and flooding the job postings with unqualified jerks and making it incredibly hard for people who actually fit the job to even get noticed? Do you see anything there about navigation routing AIs directing people to drive right into fires that they're trying to escape because the roads leading toward the fire were less crowded and had less traffic? How about somewhere between 11,000 and 26,000 people accused of welfare fraud by a flawed AI used by the Dutch government? How about the, quote, aggressive and risky, unquote, AI behavior exhibited by the control systems of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft? You know, the ones that crashed and killed 346 people. Now, I am not anti-AI. I'm not one of those people who thinks that we can put the genie back in the bottle, or that we should, or even could just turn the whole thing off. There are a lot of things that AI is already making easier, especially, at least as far as my ADHD brain is concerned, automating tedious, repetitive crap that I hate doing, like transcribing videos to create closed caption files. But we can't keep letting them do this. We must not continue to let the AI companies steer the conversation towards potential, maybe possible, sometimes iffy, sensationalist, potentially maybe world-ending scenarios that they dragged out of some sci-fi action flick, and telling us to trust that they're really, really busy saving the world and don't have time for that other stuff. Because there are people being harmed right now. And more people are being harmed every day. These companies need to be forced to be transparent. They need to be forced to audit their trading data and compensate the people whose work they stole. Companies are on track to spend $1 trillion on AI, according to Goldman Sachs, and some of that should be allocated to the copyright holders. Before you start, as far as I know, nothing that I've written and none of my videos have actually been scraped by AI, so I'm not saying that just because I think I'll make money off of it. These companies need to be held accountable and financially responsible for the things that their AIs create. The best way to stop deepfake porn is to find the companies, and find them a lot, if their AIs can be tricked into making it. We'll never make things better for the people being harmed now if we only ever talk about potential future risks from years to generations from now. And focusing on a theoretical future threat while ignoring current threats is the least effective way to deal with the future threat. Here's the thing. Although the folks that work with it, especially the business folks, don't want to admit it because nobody wants to hear it, all of the AI products are just software, and the rules of software still apply. Specifically in this case, I'm talking about the rules of what's called the software development lifecycle. We've learned over the last few decades, while studying software development, that the worst way to write something is the model that we call the Big Bang. The dumbest way to write software is to lock yourself and your developers and your testers in an ivory tower and think and tinker and test and show nothing to anyone for years until the conditions are exactly right that it's time to release it. Sound familiar? Working on building protections from non-existent, theoretically future super intelligent AI for years and hoping that when it's needed that you got it right the first time? Dumb idea. Building minimum viable software, getting it out there, and then incrementally fixing bugs and adding new features is better. And it results in a much more stable system than working on something for years in private and then releasing the whole thing at once. That's the iterative software development lifecycle model, the one that Agile is a spinoff of. It's almost always the right answer compared to waterfall or Big Bang, and it is in this case too. Think about it. The companies don't even know, or at least claim not to know, what data they actually use to train their models. How confident does that make you that they'll be able to save the world? But there's another option. Imagine if they could figure out how to audit their models and understand which pieces of data were used and how much they were used to get each answer. That information could allow them to set up a Spotify-like model where some fraction of the money they get for each query gets allocated proportionally amongst all the copyright holders that contributed to the answer. And when it comes time to try to prevent the AIs from going rogue, Imagine how useful it would be to already have learned how to tie each query back to all of its various resources in proportion. There are a very small number of papers that indicate that some researchers are doing some very, very early work along those lines, and good for them. There's a handful of that going on, just a handful, and there needs to be a whole lot more. Of course, the team that published that research was recently disbanded by OpenAI. So much for expecting any increase in work in that area. And Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, as of last month is pushing an entirely different threat. He's saying, and this is after other safety teams were disbanded, mind you, he's saying that they need to go faster so that China doesn't get there ahead of us. He says China will, quote, leverage technology to develop new ways of spying on their own citizens or creating next-generation cyber weapons to use against other countries. He has jumped right over the Terminator and the Matrix in favor of Red Dawn and the Manchurian Candidate. And if we let them change the narrative, so instead of saving the world from SkyNet, they start talking about preventing China from building their own SkyNet by building ours first, we are going to end up in a cyberpunk dystopian hellscape. In that world, the harm to individuals is pervasive and intractable. All your content belongs to them. The AIs will make decisions about your employment, your finances, and even your incarceration, and you'll have nowhere to appeal. And even the voices and likenesses of people like Scarlett Johansson and Taylor Swift effectively become the property of the AI companies to be exploited for profit and to increase the value of the stock that belongs to the executives. AI safety should not be about saving the world, either from SkyNet or from China. That's a distraction. It's delusionally narcissistic. And not only does it make it easier for the AI companies to ignore the real problems, but it makes them seem like heroes instead of the cause of so much suffering. We need to insist on better. After all, AIs are pumping the internet more and more full of bugs every single day, and more of those bugs are causing real harm to real people. And if anyone at OpenAI or Microsoft or Google tries to convince you that they're too busy saving the world to worry about those little bugs of those little people, they're just trying to sell off a bunch of overvalued stock options to you before the bubble pops. Let's be careful out there.